We keep trying to automate our way out of pain. Faster deploys, faster builds, faster ops. But the funny part is, the faster the system gets, the more expensive the mistakes get too. This week is basically three versions of that lesson. Hey, I'm Brian Teller. I work in DevOps and SRE, and I run Teller's Tech. This is Ship It Weekly, where I filter the noise and pull out what actually matters when you're the one running infrastructure and owning reliability. If something's hype, I'll call it hype. If it changes how you operate, we'll talk about it. Quick bit of housekeeping. The site is shipitweekly.fm. That's where the show notes and links live. And if this show has been useful, hit follow or subscribe wherever you are listening. If you've got 10 seconds, a quick rating or review also really helps way more than it should. All right, three main stories for today. First, curl basically said we're shutting down our bug bounty program because we're getting flooded with AI garbage. That sounds petty until you realize what it's actually about. Signal to noise, burnout, and how incentives can accidentally wreck your security pipeline. Second, AWS just made RDS blue-green deployments faster, with writer switchover downtime typically 5 seconds or less in single region setups. If you run production databases, this is a legitimately big lever, but it also comes with the usual yeah, but what about caveats. Third, ECR finally supports cross-repository layer sharing, which sounds like a tiny registry feature until you're the person paying for storage and watching CI push the same base layers across 200 microservice repos like it's a hobby. Then the lightning round, a really good Kubernetes post on building kubectl-like CLIs without re-implementing the whole universe. A Helm charts write-up worth bookmarking, plus a couple of tools that are worth looking at. And we'll close with the human side, the irony that automation doesn't remove responsibility, it moves it. And it usually moves it into the most overloaded humans at the worst possible time. So, curl. If you haven't seen this one, the curl project posted changes to stop their bug bounty program at the end of January 2026. And the reason is basically the volume of low-quality AI-generated vuln reports has become a tax they can't afford anymore. And I want to be careful here because the headline can turn into dumb discourse like AI bad or security people are cranky. That's not the point though. The point is incentives. Bug bounties are already a weird incentive machine. They work best when the incoming reports are rarish, thoughtful, reproducible, and written by someone who actually validated something. But if you can create an environment where someone can crank out 50 convincing-looking reports in an afternoon, and they only need one to hit to maybe get paid, you've just created an attacker. Except the target is your maintainer's attention span. This hits platform people in a few ways. One, it's the same pattern as alert fatigue. The first 10 useless alerts are annoying. The 500th useless alert changes how you behave. You stop trusting the channel. You start ignoring it. And then eventually, the real one shows up and everybody gets hurt. Two, it's a reminder that intake is part of your system design. We talk about security tooling like it's just scanners and policies. But the workflow is the product. If your workflow can be spammed, it will be spammed. Three, this is also a very real maintainer sustainability problem. Curl is foundational internet plumbing. If the people maintaining that plumbing have to spend their evenings debunking hallucinated CVEs, it's not free. It's a direct drain on the project's ability to ship real fixes. So what do you do with this besides nod sadly? If you run internal security intake, or even just your normal ops intake, steal the lesson. add friction where spam happens. That can be as simple as requiring real repro steps, requiring environment details, requiring a minimal proof, or forcing the submitter to do one more round trip before you spend time. Not because you hate people, but because you're protecting the team's attention. And honestly, I think we're going to see more of this, more projects putting guardrails around community intake. Not because they don't want reports, but because they want fewer, better reports. All right, let's switch from human bandwidth is the bottleneck to database downtime is the bottleneck. AWS posted an update that RDS Blue-Green deployments can now reduce writer upgrade downtime to typically 5 seconds or lower for single region configs. If you're not deep in this world, Blue-Green is basically you stand up a green environment that's kept in sync, you test your changes there, and then you switch traffic so green becomes the new production. The reason this matters is the painful part of database upgrades is not usually the upgrade itself. It's the how long is my primary not writable window. For a lot of teams, that window is where you end up negotiating with product, doing off-hours work, or just punting upgrades longer than you should. So AWS tightening that switchover window is real value. But here's the part I'd say out loud on an on-call team. Don't confuse fast switchover with safe upgrade. You still need to think about the stuff that bites you in real life. If your application can't tolerate a brief blip, you still need retry behavior that doesn't melt your connection pools. If you've got long-running transactions, you need to understand what the switchover does to them. If you are doing anything spicy with replication slots, parameter groups, extensions, or oddball maintenance jobs, you still need to test the green environment like it's going to betray you, because it might. Also, and this is the platform angle, reduced downtime is not the same as no coordination. A lot of orgs treat DB upgrades like a once-a-quarter fire drill because the process is fragile. If blue-green gets you to a world where upgrades are boring, that's the win. Boring is the goal. So my takeaway is if you are on RDS MySQL, Postgres, or MariaDB, this is worth revisiting. Even if you tried blue-green before and shrugged, the improved switchover timing might be enough to change how often you are willing to use it. Now, let's talk about a feature that is way less glamorous than database downtime, but might save your CI bill and your sanity. AWS ECR now supports cross-repository layer sharing, meaning repositories can share common image layers when blob mounting is enabled at the registry level. This is one of those features where the AWS headline is polite, but the real-world version is stop storing the same base image layers 300 times because you split the world into 300 repos. If you've got a lot of services that all build off of the same base layers, like the same distro base, the same language runtime, the same internal golden image, ECR can now deduplicate that across repos. So what changes? Push performance can improve because you are not re-uploading layers ECR already has. Storage can be less stupid because the registry can reuse layers instead of treating every repo like a separate universe. And in CI, especially if you do a lot of rebuilds, this can reduce the pain of why is this build pushing 800 megabytes again when nothing changed? Now the platform and governance angle. This is also a boundary question. A lot of people use separate repos as a mental model for isolation. Not security isolation exactly, but organizational isolation. That team owns that image. Layer sharing doesn't mean the images are merged, but it does mean the backend storage model is more global. If you've got strict compliance requirements, you might want to understand how that interacts with retention, scanning, and who can access what. But overall, this is a very rare thing in Cloudland. a simple feature that makes life better with basically no downside for most teams. If you run a big ECR footprint, this is worth enabling and measuring. You'll feel it fastest in why are our pushes so slow? And why is our registry bill weird? All right, lightning round. First up, the Kubernetes blog post, Uniform API Server Access using clientcmd. This is for anyone who has ever written a kubectl plugin or wanted to build an internal CLI that feels like kubectl, and then realized kubectl has a million flags and conventions. The post is basically a guide for how to use the same clientcmd pattern so your tool behaves like users expect. Next, building robust Helm charts. I like this one because it's not here's Helm basics. It's more the stuff you learn after you've maintained charts that break in production. Values structure, templates that don't explode, and patterns that keep your chart from turning into a pile of conditionals nobody wants to touch. Next, a tool called TTL. This is basically traceroute grew up. With a TUI and a bunch of diagnostics you usually end up doing manually. MTU discovery, NAT detection, route flap alerts, that kind of stuff. If you do network debugging and you're tired of bouncing between MTR, traceroute, and vibes, it's worth a look. And last quick one. Docker Kanvas. InfoQ did a write-up on it. And the short version is Docker is trying to bridge Docker Compose workflows into cloud deployment workflows. And visually, it's aiming at that make deployments less mysterious audience. I don't think it replaces Helm or Customize tomorrow, but it is worth watching because it's another signal that developer-friendly workflows are creeping closer to production deployment patterns. All right, Human Closer. For the Human Closer this week, SRE Weekly linked Honeycomb's interim report for their extended EU incident. And the reason I want to mention it is not because the vendor had an outage. It's the operational reality of multi-day incidents, and specifically the part that a lot of orgs pretend doesn't exist, managing human energy. In the report, the theme that stuck out was fix wasn't just restart thing. It involved real engineering work over multiple days, new functionality and procedures, and coordination that stretched people thin. And if you've been through one of those, you know the hardest part is not always the technical root cause. It's keeping the team effective on day 2, because day 1 is adrenaline. Day 1 is everyone showing up, focused, and ready to grind. Day 2 is where mistakes happen because people are tired, context gets dropped, communication gets sloppy. You start repeating the same investigations. You start making changes just to feel progress. And if you don't manage that, you can accidentally extend the incident by exhausting the team trying to fix it. So here's the point I'd steal for your own org. You need an incident process that assumes humans are a limited resource. Rotations matter. Sleep matters. Handoffs matter. Having someone whose only job is to keep the timeline and reduce chaos matters. Also, you need leadership behavior that doesn't make it worse. If the team is deep in a multi-day incident and leadership is demanding constant updates, you are literally stealing cycles from the people doing the work. The ideal incident machine is one where the humans are protected enough to stay sharp. And this loops back to the theme of the episode. Automation speeds up systems. But if you don't build the oversight and resilience around it, you just accelerate your way into bigger failure. You want faster deploys, safer upgrades, more automation, sure, but you also want breaks, blast radius controls, and an incident process that doesn't burn your people down when the systems get weird. Because the real bottleneck in reliability work is almost always humans. Not because humans are bad, but because humans are finite. All right, quick recap and links, and then I'm out. That's it for this episode of Ship It Weekly. We covered curl ending their bug bounty program after getting flooded with low-quality AI-generated reports, and why that's really a story about incentives, noise, and protecting maintainer time. We covered AWS improving RDS blue-green deployments, with writer switchover downtime typically 5 seconds or less, and why the real win is making upgrades boring, as long as your app behavior is mature enough to handle the blip. And we covered ECR cross-repo layer sharing. The lightning round was Kubernetes clientcmd patterns for better CLIs, robust Helm chart lessons, Docker Kanvas, and the TTL networking tool. Links and show notes are on shipitweekly.fm. If you got something out of this, follow the show wherever you are listening. And if you can, leave a quick rating or review. It helps a ton. I'm Brian, and I'll see you next week.